Introduction. Shut your eyes and imagine that you are standing in a desert. What kinds of things do you see around you? Camels, cactuses, and sand dunes? This is what most people think of when they imagine the desert. But deserts are far from rich, far more rich and varied than the sandy landscape you might imagine. A desert is any area where water evaporates or dries up. That follows as rain. Deserts can be hot, cool, or cold. In fact, both North and South Poles are considered deserts because the water is frozen. Deserts make up almost 1/3 of the land of Earth, covering mountains, canyons, and glaciers. In this book, you will find out more about the surprising inhabitants of three amazing deserts in Sahara, the Gobi, and the Atacama. The Sahara. On many maps of Africa, the entire top third of the continent is colored yellow or pale beige. This color represents the vast, dry land of the Sahara Desert. By far the largest deserts in the world. This is where we get many of our images for the desert. Great ocean-like landscapes of yellow and sand dunes cover 1/5 of Sahara. The Tuareg people, in their blue flowing robes and turbans, lead caravans of camels across the sandy desert to trade salt. But Sahara is much more than sand. It might surprise you to learn that the world's largest desert contains one of the world's largest rivers. The Nile flows along the east edge of Sahara, bringing life-giving water to crops. The city also along its banks with river allow the great civilization of ancient Egypt to survive among the dunes. In ancient Egypt, as today, people carved irrigation or watering channels to carry water from riverbed to thirsty crops, the animals and people. There is also water hidden deep underground in Sahara. In some places, it seeps close to the surface, creating oases or a small spot of Greenland. But don't get the idea that Sahara is moist and pleasant. In some areas, no rain falls for years. The temperature can get as high as 136 Fahrenheit, 58 Celsius, and powerful winds whip up sun-blocking dust storms. The Sahara is a home to thorny trees, shrubs, and low-growing grasses. Several kinds of antelope survive there, as do many rodents, birds, and reptiles. One kind of reptile, a stink, is known as a sandfish because it can swim through the sand. People have lived in Sahara for centuries. Northern Africa is a natural trading area for people from Africa, Europe, and Asia. Rich ancient cities survived on irrigated crops and a wealth of spice. Fabrics and precious metals and gems passing through. During the Middle Ages, Northern Africa was a center of art, writing, science, and learning. Today, a treasure lies hidden under the Sahara. The desert holds the world's largest reserves of oil, a liquid that many people depend on heavily for fuel and energy. Some countries on heavily for fuel and energy. Some countries of Savannah have become incredibly wealthy just from selling oil. Unfortunately, many nations have fought wars over this valuable resource. The Gobi, Mongolia, and northern China, which lie deep within the immense continent of Asia, as homes to the high, dry Gobi Desert. It might surprise you that Gobi is cold. It gets as low as minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 40 degrees Celsius. Like the Sahara, the Gobi Desert was often crisscrossed by traders bringing goods to and from Asia, but like Sahara, Gobi is too harsh, too remote to support cities. Many parts of Gobi are high, dry, and mountainous. The soil is rocky and salty, so there are few plants other than tough grasses and shrubs. But these grasses are enough to support grazing animals such as Mongolian horses, antelope, and gazelles. Also feeding on grasses are many kinds of gerbils and other small rodents called jerboa. Most of the people who inhabit Gobi are nomads, people who move from place to place, often search for food. Some of these nomads rely on horses and almost everything they need to live: meat, milk, hides of tents, and transportation. These nomads who live in Mongolia are excellent horse trainers who rope and race horses, as well as any rider or rider. The Gobi has very few natural resources such as oil, but there is a fascinating sort of treasure there: fossils. The dry climate and lack of humans have preserved delicate fossils for millions of years. Today, scientists flock to Gobi for new discoveries. It was here that the first dinosaur eggs were found, and with the fossil of the feathered reptile led scientists to believe birds may be related to dinosaurs. The Atacama, just west of South America's Atacama Desert, is the largest body of water in the world. The Pacific Ocean. The Atacama lies along the Pacific coast, squeezed in the narrow band between ocean and the high Andes Mountains. Temperatures in the Atacama are pleasant, between 50 degrees and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. One would think that being near to the ocean would give Atacama some moisture. But this desert is possibly the driest place on Earth. It's in some places in Atacama, many have never rained in human memory. Some moisture does visit Atacama in the spring. Snow on the Andes melts and flows in rivers across the desert of the Pacific. But these rivers don't fill with water often, and they are usually steep, narrow, and quick-moving, so the water does not have a chance to spread out and sink in. The one other reliable form of moisture is fog that rolls it off the cool ocean. Many plants have developed ingenious ways to catch this fog. Some plants leaves gather droplets of fog and direct them toward their roots. Small cloud forests of these plants can grow in sheltered areas across the coasts where the fog is thick enough. Other than the cloud forests, almost no plants life grows in the Atacama. Some plants exist as dormant or inactive seeds that spring to life after a rain shower, which may come only once every 10 years. There's a few animals in Atacama besides rodents and insects. The chinchali, a popular pet, lives here. Llamas and alpacas, fur relatives of the camel, can also be found in damp areas near rivers and high in the mountains. But where the Atacama lacks in animals and makes up for in minerals, the Andes are volcanic mountains, and their volcano activity brought copper, enterites, and sulfur to the surface. Salt is also abundant here in marshy lakes. Mining companies build entire towns for workers who dig up these minerals. Port cities spring up along the shore, where the minerals are shipped around the world. All food and water must be trucked in or shipped by boat. Because the desert's unforgiving climate, miners are some of the very few people who have never made their homes in Atacama. Conclusion. So what can you find in the desert that you might not have expected? Lakes of salt, dense fog, and underground oceans of oil, ancient civilizations and expert hoarders and mining towns. You may have thought of deserts as empty, lifeless places, but for thousands of years, plants, animals, and humans have known deserts as sources of life, riches, and wonder.